be able to guess that I'm going to focus on one verse in particular today, verse 15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And this is one that has been meaningful to me for a long time, and I hope it has something to say to you today. And I thought as we dig a little deeper into it and think about what it means for us, maybe it's best just to start with the me. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, in its original setting, the me referred to Joshua. In that patriarchal society, Joshua was speaking on behalf of all the women and children and slaves that were in his household. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, today, we don't operate under quite those same rules. I don't know about y'all, but Alan doesn't often sit down and tell me exactly what I'm going to believe. We talk about it a lot, but it's a little different today. And so I think it's fair to, to broaden that interpretation of what the me is. Some of you are a me in the sense that Joshua was. You are the male head of household in your family. But many of you here today are outside those boundaries. You are women, you are children, you may be grandparents or single. You may not be the male head of household. But still for you, I think there's a question here. Will you and your house serve the Lord? You're given a choice to make as an individual. And the choice is whether you can make this statement in the first person. I love that in this text, Joshua gives the Israelites like every possible out they can possibly have. You don't really want to serve God. It's too hard, and there are other gods, and you probably like them better. But the Israelites are insistent that they want to serve God, that they're making that choice. And here today, I think God gives us an amazing amount of free will. We have every out possible if we want to take it. But the question is, will we say this sentence? Will we claim it as our choice? Like the Israelites who looked at what God did for them as they came out of Egypt. Will we look at what God did for us on Easter and say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord? So if you will, whoever you are, whatever your role in your house, if you will, I want you to say this verse with me and really emphasize the me part of it, okay? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Oh, that's good. So a few of you are on board with this. I like that. So once we've looked at the me part, the next part is the house. And as I mentioned, in the original context, it's referring to the people. Joshua, his women, his children, his slaves. And a number of us here today live in homes with other people present with us. And for those of us in that situation, I think this is a good broadening of what it means to be a follower of Christ. This isn't just something that we do individually, but it's something we do together. Now, when I was a teenager growing up in my parents' house, I loved the individual side of my faith. I think it made me feel independent, and as a teenager, I wanted every ounce of independence I could get. So I took a kind of like prideful pleasure out of the very few Sundays where I would go to church by myself and the family was off doing something else. There I am, little Miss Independent, sitting on her pew by herself. Or at night, when I would read a chapter out of the Bible, something that has become a habit for me in life. I'd go into my room and close the door and read that chapter all by myself, little Miss Independent. Now, it's good to do things on our own as people of faith, but we are not designed to be entirely on our own. There is something about being a follower of Christ that requires us, for better or worse, to do it with other people. And I'm preaching to the choir today, because all of y'all are here. And so I know you get that on some level. If you thought faith was something that you could do on your own, you'd be off anywhere else by yourself today, but you're here with everyone here. The Lord's Prayer really drives this home for me. The Lord's Prayer does not go, "My Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Give me this day my daily bread." It's so awkward I stumble over the words. And those of you who know it by heart, you can hear the difference right away. It's "Our Father who art in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread." Faith is something that we're meant to do together as a church, but also, I think, as a house, as the people that we live with, that we do faith together and find ways to do that. Now, if you live by yourself, maybe you're thinking, well, I'm off the hook for this sermon. Whatever application there's going to be, it doesn't apply to me because it's just me. But you're not off the hook, of course. There's another way to think about me and my house. And this is taking it a little beyond what Joshua imagined, but I think it's fair. We can think of house in terms of the four walls, the physical building that you live in, and how you can use that to serve the Lord. Now, just by God's good gift, this week, one of the chapters that I read one day was 2 Chronicles 3. And it was instructions to Solomon, or from Solomon, on how to build God's temple. But as I read it, in my Bible at home, a New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, I noticed that it consistently said house instead of temple. Use gold to build the house. Put cherubim in the house. Make the house this big. That's interesting. And then it got even more interesting when I came to church. Usually I read that same passage again before I pray over the prayer list for our church. And when I read it in my Bible here, the New International Version, it said temple. Use gold to build God's temple. Put cherubim in God's temple. Make God's temple this big. So I dusted off my Hebrew books. And this was a painful process because I am not very good at Hebrew and it is a painful language. So it took me far too long to figure out that the word that's translated as house and temple here is the word Beitim. Want to learn some Hebrew? You can say it with me. Beitim. It can be translated either way. It means house and temple. So, you know how we're here in the sanctuary? And you might call this the sanctuary or the church, but some people every now and then will call it God's house, the house of God, yeah? I think what we're trying to do is to take our houses and do the opposite. Most of the time we call that our house, our home, our condo, our apartment, whatever it is. But we're trying to take it and make it like a little temple. To make our homes where we live a place that serves the Lord in the same way a church does. So if you're tracking with me, if this makes any sense at all, I want you to read the verse again and emphasize house in it. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Okay. So we can move forward to the serve the Lord part. And what I want to do today is to offer a few options, ways that you, as individuals choosing to serve Christ, and your house, whether that's people you live with or simply the building and the stuff that you live in, can serve the Lord. And I hope that one of these will kind of strike your interest, will be something that you can take home and try to be more about serving the Lord. And the first one is prayer. To be a house of prayer. It's always good to start with prayer, right? Now, if you live with other people, I want to tell you that praying with other people, I know, can be kind of awkward. Not all of us are comfortable praying out loud. And even for me as a pastor, when Alan and I first got married, we tried to pray together at night, and we still try to do this. And sometimes it feels kind of uncomfortable. But over time, it got better and more conversational. So if you have never prayed out loud with the people that you live with, here's your low-hanging fruit, the first step. Pray over meals. That counts, y'all. That's praying together. And if you pray over each meal together, then you will become more of a house of prayer, a house that serves the Lord. Now, the next step, maybe the challenge round, is something that the pastor who did the premarital counseling for Alan and I, he said that his wife and he would swap prayer requests every day. And then as they went about their days, they would be praying for each other all day for that thing. And that's kind of neat. And if you live by yourself, I think the challenge is to build in more times of intentional set-aside prayer. So that prayer is not something we just do here at church, but of course it's something that we do in our homes. All right, so first, we serve the Lord by making our houses houses of prayer. The second is to make our houses houses of good stewardship. And this is where we really focus on the material aspect of our homes. Within the four walls of your house or apartment or townhome or whatever is most of the stuff that you acquire. And I think as Christians, we're challenged to think about our stuff in a way in which we are good stewards. And this requires us to recognize the difference between a need and a want. And if we are indulging in so many wants that we don't have enough finances left over to give money to God, or we don't have enough left over to help our neighbor when they're in need, we might be spending too much on our wants. And in order to shift that, it takes some tough conversations with the people you live with, if you live with other people. Well, if it's just you, then you have that easier this week. The other way we can be good stewards with our houses is we can think about the environmental aspect. You know, caring for the environment, it's not just for hippies anymore. People like you and me who are trying to be faithful followers of Christ can do things like recycle, turn off the electricity and turn off the water when we can, try to reuse things instead of putting them in the trash. These are all ways in which we're good stewards of what God has given us. They're ways in which our houses serve the Lord. So we can be houses of prayer and houses of good stewardship. But this last one, y'all, I've saved the best for last. This is hands down the best of the 10 Commandments. It's like a little gift with a bow on it given to us that we seldom open. And that is to be a house that observes a Sabbath. We're kind of out of the rhythm of this, most of us. Some of you today observe a Sabbath. But many of us, and I say us intentionally, we struggle with Sabbath. We have a society of productivity where we feel important and purposeful if we're doing things all the time. And sometimes there's just the logistics. In order to observe a Sabbath on Sunday, it means you have to do some extra work on Saturday to get ready. But Sabbath is such a gift. It's something God commanded us to do because that's what God did. It's something we're commanded to do because if we stopped working one day a week, then we acknowledge that the world continues to turn without us in it. That God continues to work, and so we can rest. And this is something we absolutely have to do together as a house. It puts a bit of a damper on Sabbath if one member of the household is making us feel guilty for not mowing the lawn today. It's something you have to talk about and do together. And again, if you live by yourself, then, well, you're off to a head start. You can make these decisions on your own. But when we set